The old ranch house had seen blizzards, droughts, and gunfights, but nothing unsettled Caleb Turner like the soft knock that came after midnight. It wasn't the kind of knock made by an outlaw. It was too weak. Too tired. He reached for the rifle leaning beside the front door anyway. Out on the prairie, kindness without caution was how men ended up buried beneath wooden crosses. When he pulled the door open, the wind nearly tore it from his hand. A young woman stood on the porch. She couldn't have been older than 23. Her faded blue dress was soaked from the freezing rain. Mud covered the hem, and one shoe was missing. Long chestnut hair clung to her face, hiding eyes too exhausted to hold fear anymore. "I'll leave if you tell me to," she whispered. I don't think I'll survive another mile." Caleb looked past her into the darkness. No horses. No wagon. No one following. "What's your name?" She hesitated. "Lily." "Last name?" Another pause. "I'd rather not say." Most men would have shut the door. A nameless stranger usually meant trouble. But Caleb noticed something that made him lower the rifle. She wasn't looking inside the house. She wasn't searching for valuables. She wasn't even asking for food. She was trying to stay standing. Without another word, he stepped aside. "You've got one night." She looked at him as though he had offered her the entire world. "Thank you." Inside, warmth from the fireplace wrapped around her trembling body. She stopped just beyond the doorway, careful not to dirty the polished wooden floor. "I'm making a mess. The floor can be cleaned." She gave the smallest smile. "I've forgotten what kindness feels like." Caleb fetched an old wool blanket that had belonged to his mother years before. "Dry yourself." She accepted it carefully, almost afraid it might disappear if she held it too tightly. "I won't steal anything. I didn't ask." "I know." Silence settled between them. He poured hot coffee into 2 cups. She wrapped both hands around hers before taking the first sip. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I'm sorry." "For what?" "I don't usually cry." Caleb stared into the fire. People who apologize for crying usually have every reason to. She laughed through the tears. It was the saddest laugh he'd ever heard. After a simple supper of stew and fresh bread, she ate slowly, as though she expected someone to snatch the bowl away. "When did you last eat?" Caleb asked. "Yesterday." "And before that?" She lowered her eyes. "I don't remember." His jaw tightened. No one deserved to look that hungry. Not even strangers. He showed her the small room his younger sister had once used before illness claimed her years ago. "It's clean. It's more than I've had in months." She stopped at the doorway. "You don't even know me." "No. You still trusted me." He thought for a long moment. "No. I trusted my instincts." She nodded quietly. "Then I hope they don't disappoint you." She closed the door. Caleb remained awake by the fire long after midnight. Something about her story didn't fit. Her hands. Despite the dirt, they weren't rough enough for years of hard labor. Her speech carried traces of education. And around her neck, barely visible beneath the blanket, he'd noticed a thin silver chain with an emerald pendant worth more than most ranches in the county. Homeless girls didn't wear jewelry like that. Unless they'd once belonged somewhere very different. Morning arrived with pale sunlight spilling across the prairie. Caleb stepped outside to feed the horses. When he returned, the front room was empty. The bedroom door stood open. The blanket lay folded neatly on the bed. She was gone. He frowned. Had she slipped away before dawn? Then he heard voices from the barn. One belonged to Lily. The other belonged to a man Caleb had hoped never to see again. Sheriff Wallace. Caleb's grip tightened around the feed bucket. The sheriff wasn't asking questions. He was pointing a revolver directly at the young woman. And Lily wasn't begging for mercy. She was protecting something hidden behind her back. Caleb dropped the bucket and crossed the yard before either of them noticed. "What are you doing?" he demanded. Sheriff Wallace turned slowly. "Morning, Caleb. You planning to explain why you're pointing a gun at a woman who spent the night under my roof?" Wallace's expression never changed. "Step away from her. I asked first." The sheriff sighed. "She's wanted." Caleb looked toward Lily. She stood pale but steady, one hand hidden behind an old saddle resting against the wall. "Wanted for what?" "Grand theft." Lily's lips parted. "That's a lie." Wallace ignored her. "She stole money and jewelry from a wealthy family in Red Creek." Caleb frowned. "Did she?" Lily met his eyes. "I stole nothing." Convenient answer. The sheriff took another step forward. "Move aside, Caleb." Something felt wrong. Wallace hadn't shown a warrant. He hadn't asked questions. He hadn't even tried to arrest her properly. He simply wanted to frighten her. Caleb had spent enough years reading cattle buyers and poker players to recognize desperation. The sheriff wasn't acting like the law. He was acting like a hunter. "What are you hiding?" Caleb asked quietly. Lily swallowed. "If I tell you, you'll wish you'd never opened your door." "Try me." Wallace suddenly barked, "Enough." His revolver lifted higher. Before anyone could react, one of Caleb's horses kicked the barn door, startled by a clap of thunder outside. The loud crash echoed through the stable. For the briefest second, Wallace glanced away. Lily moved. She darted behind a stack of hay bales. The sheriff fired. The bullet splintered a wooden post. Caleb lunged forward, slamming into Wallace's shoulder. The revolver flew into the straw. The two men crashed onto the barn floor. Wallace swung a fist. Caleb answered with one harder. Years of ranch work had built strength no badge could match. Within moments, Wallace staggered backward, blood running from his lip. "This isn't over," he growled. "It is on my land. You don't know who you're protecting." "Then tell me." The sheriff climbed onto his horse instead. "When she ruins your life, remember I warned you." He rode away without another word. Silence returned. Only the horses shifted nervously. Caleb turned. "Lily?" She slowly emerged from behind the hay. Her hands were shaking. "I never wanted anyone hurt." What did he mean? Instead of answering, she reached beneath her dress and removed the emerald pendant from around her neck. She pressed a hidden latch. The stone opened. Inside was a tiny folded piece of paper. Caleb stared. "What is that?" "The reason people keep trying to kill me." He unfolded the paper carefully. It wasn't a letter. It was a map. Several locations were marked in faded ink, ending with one name written in bold. Turner Ranch. Caleb felt the blood drain from his face. "My ranch?" Lily nodded. "I didn't come here by accident." The word struck him harder than any punch. "You knew who I was?" "Yes." "And you still let me believe you were just a lost traveler?" A tear slipped down her cheek. "I wanted to tell you." "So tell me now." She took a slow breath. "My father died trying to deliver that map." She looked directly into Caleb's eyes. His last words were, "Find Caleb Turner. He's the only man left I can trust." Caleb had never heard her father's name. Yet somehow, a dead stranger had trusted him with a secret worth killing for. And before he could ask another question, 3 riders appeared on the distant hill, watching the ranch through the morning mist. Their black coats fluttered in the wind. They weren't lawmen. They had come for Lily. E3 riders did not hurry. Men who expected resistance rode fast. Men who expected victory took their time. Caleb watched them from the porch, one hand resting on the worn stock of his rifle. "Stay inside," he said. Lily shook her head. "They're here because of me. They're standing on my land now." She stared at him, unable to understand why a man who had known her less than a day was willing to risk everything. "You don't owe me this." Caleb gave a faint smile. "My father taught me something. If a frightened soul knocks on your door, you either become their shelter or you become another reason they're afraid." The riders stopped just beyond the fence. Their leader tipped his black hat. "Morning, Mr. Turner. I've had better. We're looking for a young lady." "I figured." The man smiled, but it never reached his eyes. "Hand her over, and nobody gets hurt." Caleb leaned against the porch post. "You'll have to forgive me. I wasn't raised to hand guests over to strangers." The leader's smile disappeared. "She's carrying something that belongs to us." Lily stepped into the doorway. "No," she called. "It belongs to my father." The man's face hardened. "Your father stole it." "My father uncovered the truth." Caleb glanced at her. "What truth?" She took a slow breath. "My father worked as an accountant for Victor Ashcroft." She spoke the name as if it tasted bitter. He discovered that Ashcroft wasn't buying struggling ranches. He was forcing families off their land by paying Sheriff Wallace to invent crimes. Anyone who refused disappeared. Caleb's stomach tightened. "I've known families who vanished." "They didn't leave," Lily whispered. "They were driven out." The leader laughed softly. "You've always had too much imagination." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I watched you murder my father." Silence fell over the ranch. Even the wind seemed to stop. The man's calm expression cracked for the first time. He should have minded his own business. Caleb slowly lifted his rifle. "Leave." "I don't think so." The first shot came from the hill. It wasn't Caleb's. One of the outlaws fired, shattering a porch rail. Caleb answered immediately. His bullet struck the rider's shoulder, knocking him from the saddle. The remaining men scattered behind rocks and wagons. Gunfire echoed across the prairie. Lily crouched behind the doorway, clutching the pendant. "Caleb. I'm all right." Another bullet punched through the barn wall. The horses panicked. Caleb sprinted toward the stable. "If they stampede, we're finished." He calmed the frightened animals while bullets tore through the wooden boards around him. Lily couldn't simply hide. She grabbed an old hunting rifle hanging above the fireplace. She had never fired at a man before. Her hands shook. The outlaw leader emerged from behind a wagon, creeping toward the house. She remembered her father's final words. "Never let evil convince you that courage belongs only to men." She pulled the trigger. The bullet struck the dirt inches from his boots. He stumbled backward, giving Caleb enough time to return. Within minutes, the surviving riders realized the ranch was no easy target. The leader mounted his horse. "This isn't over." "It is for today," Caleb answered. The men disappeared beyond the ridge. Only then did Caleb notice blood soaking through his left sleeve. Lily rushed to him. "You're hurt." "It's nothing." "It isn't nothing." She tore a strip from her own dress and wrapped the wound with surprising care. "You've done this before," Caleb said. "My mother was a nurse." She tied the knot gently. "I couldn't save my parents." Her voice trembled. "I don't think I can survive losing someone else." Their eyes met. For the first time, neither of them looked away. Something quiet and powerful settled between them. Neither of them spoke it aloud. Neither needed to. But from the hill beyond the ranch, Sheriff Wallace lowered the spyglass from his eyes. Standing beside him was Victor Ashcroft himself. The wealthy cattle baron smiled coldly. "If Caleb Turner wants a war," Ashcroft said, "we'll burn his world to the ground." The attack came 3 nights later. Not with bullets. With fire. Caleb woke to frantic barking. His old sheepdog, Duke, scratched wildly at the bedroom door. Smoke already filled the hallway. "Fire!" Caleb shouted. He burst outside just as flames climbed the walls of the main barn. The dry summer timber burned like oil. Lily ran from the house carrying buckets from the well. "It's spreading." Caleb looked toward the pasture. Half his horses were still trapped inside. Without thinking, he wrapped a wet blanket around his shoulders and ran into the burning barn. "Caleb, don't." The heat stole his breath. Wood cracked overhead. The frightened horses screamed. He slashed the first stall rope. "Go!" One by one the animals burst into the night, racing across the fields. Then he heard another sound. A terrified whinny from the far corner. A young chestnut mare. She had become trapped beneath a fallen beam. Caleb strained with every ounce of strength he had. The beam barely moved. Outside, Lily saw the roof beginning to collapse. She ignored Caleb's orders and rushed inside. "What are you doing here?" "Helping you." Together they lifted the beam just high enough for the mare to scramble free. A deafening crack echoed above them. "The roof!" Lily cried. Caleb threw himself over her as burning timber crashed where they had been standing only a heartbeat before. They stumbled out of the barn coughing, covered in ash. Behind them, years of hard work disappeared into flames. By sunrise, little remained but blackened posts and drifting smoke. Caleb stared silently at the ruins. "My father built that barn." Lily slipped her hand into his. "I'm so sorry." He didn't pull away. He held her hand instead. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally Caleb looked at her. "They're trying to make me choose." "Between what?" "My ranch, and protecting you." She lowered her eyes. "Then don't choose me." He gently lifted her chin. "I already did." Tears filled her eyes. Before she could answer, a rider approached carrying a white cloth tied to his rifle. "I've got a message." Caleb took the folded letter. It contained only one sentence. "Bring the map to Black Canyon by sunset, or the girl dies, and every rancher who stands with you dies with her." Caleb crushed the paper in his fist. Lily knew then that the final battle could no longer be avoided. And this time, one of them might not come home. Caleb did not sleep. He sat on the front porch until the eastern sky turned silver, the folded note resting in his hand. Lily stepped outside carrying 2 cups of coffee. "I knew I'd find you here." He accepted the cup but never took his eyes off the horizon. "If I hand them the map, they'll kill us anyway." "I know. If I don't, they'll come after every family in this valley." Silence settled between them. Finally, Lily reached into her pocket and removed the emerald pendant. "My father once told me something." She placed it in Caleb's hand. "He said courage isn't doing what keeps you alive. It's doing what lets you live with yourself afterward." Caleb closed his fingers around the pendant. "Then we'll finish what he started." By noon, word had spread across the valley. Without being asked, ranchers began arriving one by one. Old Ben Harper came first with his sons. Then the Morales brothers. Then widowers, cattle hands, blacksmiths, and farmers who had all suffered under Victor Ashcroft's greed. Some had lost land. Some had lost family. All had lost peace. Caleb stood before them. "I won't tell any man to risk his life today. If you ride home now, no one here will think less of you." No one moved. Old Ben smiled. About time somebody reminded that rich devil this valley still belongs to decent folk. By late afternoon, they rode toward Black Canyon. Ashcroft was already waiting. Sheriff Wallace stood beside him with nearly 20 armed men. Ashcroft spread his arms with a smile. "I knew you'd come." Caleb dismounted. "You wanted the map." "I do." Lily stepped forward before Caleb could stop her. "You destroyed my family for this." Ashcroft laughed. "Your father should have stayed loyal." "He was loyal." She looked around at the gathered ranchers. "He was loyal to innocent people." Ashcroft's smile vanished. "Enough." He raised his hand. Wallace aimed his revolver directly at Caleb. But before he could fire, a voice echoed across the canyon. "Drop the gun." Everyone turned. Half a dozen United States Marshals rode into the clearing. At their head was Marshal Ethan Cole. He held several official documents high. "We've been investigating Victor Ashcroft for months." Ashcroft's confidence disappeared. "The map your father protected," the marshal said to Lily, "shows every ranch stolen through fraud and every payment made to Sheriff Wallace. It's the evidence we needed." Wallace spun toward Ashcroft. "You told me nobody knew." Ashcroft shoved him aside. "You fool." Gunfire erupted. Chaos swept through the canyon. Riders scattered behind rocks. Bullets struck the canyon walls. Caleb tackled Lily behind a boulder just as a shot flew past her shoulder. "You stay down." "So do you." Ashcroft sprinted toward his horse, desperate to escape. Caleb chased him. The two men collided near the canyon's edge. Ashcroft drew a hidden knife. "You should have stayed out of this." He lunged. Caleb caught his wrist. The blade fell into the dust. The wealthy rancher, who had spent years ordering others to fight his battles, proved no match for a man who had spent his life working the land. With one final blow, Caleb knocked him to the ground. The marshal surrounded Ashcroft before he could rise. Wallace threw down his revolver. "It's over," the marshal said. For the first time in years, it truly was. Weeks later, the valley looked different. Families who had lost their ranches received them back. The burned barn stood surrounded by fresh timber. Neighbors arrived every morning to help rebuild it. Nobody accepted payment. They simply said, "You would have done the same." They were right. One evening, as the last rays of sunlight painted the prairie gold, Caleb hammered the final board into place. He climbed down and found Lily standing nearby. "You built it back." "We built it back." She smiled. "I was supposed to stay one night." "I remember." "And now?" Caleb reached into his pocket. The emerald pendant rested in his palm. "I think it belongs with its rightful owner." She closed his hand around it instead. "No." He looked at her in surprise. "My father protected that pendant because he hoped it would lead me to someone worth trusting." Her eyes filled with quiet tears. "It did." Caleb took a slow breath. "I've never been good with fancy speeches. I don't need one. I just know that this ranch stopped feeling like home the moment you walked away that first morning." He smiled softly. "And it started feeling like one again the moment you came back." Lily's tears finally escaped. "So, are you asking me to stay?" "I'm asking if you'll spend every morning here with me." She laughed through her tears. "I thought you'd never ask." She wrapped her arms around him, and for the first time since arriving at the ranch, she no longer felt like someone searching for a place to belong. She had found it. Years later, travelers passing through the valley often noticed the large ranch with the rebuilt red barn. If they stopped for water, they were always welcomed. No stranger was ever turned away. And whenever someone asked Caleb Turner why, he would simply smile toward the woman standing on the porch beside him and say, "Because the best thing that ever happened to me arrived with nothing but tired eyes, and a quiet knock at my door."